Hi, I'm Bri Allison with the Power of the Patient Project, and welcome to our new segment, Tell Us Your Story. Today we are joined by Miss Anna Penenberg. Miss Penenberg is a healer who integrates neurobiology, psychotherapy, and wisdom traditions into her work with families and individuals affected by trauma. She's also a single mother of two whose life changed when her youngest daughter, Dana, who was 16 years old at the time, became very ill. This was the start of the mother and daughter's medical journey together. After 2 years of doctor's appointments, Dana was eventually diagnosed with Lyme disease. Since her daughter's diagnosis, Miss Penenberg has been determined to find a cure for Dana. She also released a memoir, Dancing in the Narrows, a mother-daughter odyssey through chronic illness, which narrates their multi-year journey through illness and trauma while facing the desperation of saving her child. Miss Penenberg, welcome and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. It's a
So,
pleasure.
to start off, can you talk about what Lyme disease is?
So Lyme disease is a tick-borne infection that you get from a tick bite. And according to the CDC's numbers these days, it's 476,000 cases a year.
Wow.
And it's sometimes a very difficult diagnosis. People don't maybe think that they're sick because they had a bite if they never saw the tick bite, or they never got the rash. And then it mirrors a lot of things. You get headaches, fatigue, maybe you get the skin rash that looks like a bullseye.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't, you can still have Lyme disease. And then, it can spread to your joints, your heart, and your nervous system. So it gets very serious.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And so, what was your medical journey like leading up to your daughter's diagnosis? And how did you feel once you finally found out what her condition was?
So my daughter was 16. She looked like she was having a flu. She couldn't get out of bed, and it just went on and on. And when we got to the doctor, since she was a teen and we didn't live in the East Coast, where people more often assume that you might have Lyme disease or they might check for it, she was told that she had a mono-like virus, maybe some Epstein-Barr, and then she got diagnosed with chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, and ultimately severe depression and rheumatoid issues. So that wasn't the whole ball of wax, and the treatments for those things were not going to help her. And so she ultimately had, because it's very possible she got bit years before that, and it had been in her system a long time. So she had a chronic case of Lyme disease. So chronic Lyme disease is a much more difficult thing to unwind and to recover from.
I can't imagine what that was like through all of these different diagnoses and not actually, the problem's not actually being solved. Um, so what was that like for you guys? Was it frustrating, upsetting for you and Dana?
I remember one doctor in the beginning, he said, she'll feel better in 10 days, 2 weeks. Then it was maybe a month for mono. And we would pass that and keep going. She basically dropped out of school. She was a high school sophomore. And so it was very confusing. And we kept doing blood work and they couldn't find anything. And then the rheumatologist actually did a Lyme test, but this is where it gets trickier. The basic Lyme test will test 4 bands of blood, but the test that anyone should really do is at a lab that specializes in Lyme. and other tick-borne diseases and things. Igenics lab, we finally got to because I kept looking on the internet, and I there was like already like a huge column of symptoms that I was putting in, and I started wondering if she had Lyme, even though she'd been tested and was negative. So we ended up, I had them write a prescription for that lab, and we did the test, and they test like 22 bands of blood, and she had Lyme, and she had co-infections. So when you get your tick bite, you might get exposed to, it's kind of like an inoculation, something goes in that's in the tick. If the tick's carrying it, if it's not carrying it, you don't have it.
Mm-hmm.
But so she had 3 co-infections, which are also difficult to treat: Babesia, Bartonella, and Mycoplasma, and the Borrelia, which is the Lyme bacteria. It's a spirochete, and it likes to kind of burrow into your cells and go into your nervous system. And so I was going to read you this, but what question are we on?
The second one.
How was it when you finally found out what are, yeah, after I did that and we did the test and we found out, we were like, this is terrible, but it's great. We know what we're going to do. And that didn't turn out to be at all true, because there's been a whole evolution of treating Lyme disease, and there were doctors that got trained and trained each other, and they were called Lyme literate doctors, and they still are today. And they're MDs, but they really were intent on treating this rising number of people who continued to be sick. And so we went to a Lyme literate doctor after that, and this was in 2008. So they've experimented and figured out some things since then. But at the time, they were starting to use combinations of antibiotics in 3-month periods of time. And so, you just can't imagine. It's not like anything you've ever used antibiotics for. It's like, take your 7 days and you should feel quite a bit better and fine.
Mm-hmm.
And our first protocol was 9 months, 3 months of 2 different combinations of antibiotics 3 times. And I was just floored, And she went back to school. She was hobbling along. She rested a lot. We had this device that we had obtained from trying to try various alternative methods of healing. She did some acupuncture. We knew her nervous system was being affected, so we ended up at this clinic that tested her nervous system, and her sympathetic nerves were like really high. And anyway, we ended up with this magnet that is in my story here of the journey, Dancing in the Narrows. So we obtained this magnet that was the size of her torso, and she would lie on it, and it would take down the swelling for a time, just enough that she could feel a little better moving around and going to school. So she would lie on that in the morning before school, come home at lunch, lie on it, and again at the end of the day. So we were doing that, and she was doing the antibiotics, but ultimately we had a lot of trials through the 10 to 12 years that she was sick. And so, yeah, that's my answer to that question.
That is just a long time to not feel well and not have the right answers. So I am happy, like you said, it was happiness that you found an answer, but then it was a long road ahead of you still. And you kind of touched on Dana's symptoms a little bit, but what were some of her symptoms during the height of her illness and challenges that she faced on a daily basis?
So it became a lifestyle. And, it started in the morning. I'd have to bring the air filter down. She got very environmentally sensitive to sound and light and smell. And so I had to filter the room constantly with an air filter. And so, you know, I I thought I'd read to you the symptoms at the height of her Lyme disease journey, because it's it's pretty extensive, and it'll give you a sense of how if untreated, it will go into your system and it will disturb a lot of your bodily functioning. So the list had grown to include swollen glands, sore throat, fevers, joint pain, stiffness and swelling, muscle pain, weakness and cramping, mental issues, confusion, difficulty thinking and concentrating, problems absorbing new information, forgetfulness, poor short-term memory, and poor attention. The emotional issues, mood swings, irritability, depression, anxiety, panic attacks, headaches, light and sound sensitivity, unstable balance, lightheadedness, neck stiffness, neck pain, fatigue, poor stamina, sleep issues, insomnia, fractionated sleep, early awakening, unexplained menstrual irregularity, stomach and abdominal issues, nausea, pain, digestive discomfort, low abdominal pain, heart palpitations, chest wall pain, head congestion, breathlessness, and night sweats.
Oh, wow.
So I wanted to read that because when you go see a Lyme literate doctor and you're treating a chronic condition with this, you bring your long list of symptoms and you track how they change or they don't change or new ones come in, and they give you various supplements, pharmaceuticals for everything. And so the amount of things she was taking was a daily job. And again, it would start in the morning. I'd come down with the air filter, and that's if she didn't wake up in the night and call me in for something. And then she would take the things she had to take before on an empty stomach. Then she would take the things she had to take with food, and then etc. The whole day would go like that. And then I was making her food because she got very sensitive and couldn't eat a lot of things. And so we were also trying various medicinal diets to keep swelling down and so she could digest things. And so there's a exciting journey in the book about raw food diets, raw animal food, organ meats. I mean, we tried some pretty interesting protocols and bone broths. And anyway, and so, and then there was I'm not sure if this is part of the question, but she ultimately ended up doing one of the protocols that's very common if you're this sick with Lyme, and that's an IV protocol with Rocephin. So at that time, they were just discovering maybe they should pulse it, not give it to you every day. So she had a port put in, and she did it for 5 months, and eventually she was on 4 days on and 3 days off. And she actually got sicker, so we quit that. And yeah.
Wow. That is the amount of symptoms that you read. It sounds like she had like every illness in the book. based on just those symptoms and having to deal with that on a daily basis. And she had to just be so uncomfortable all the time. Um, and for you, that's a full-time job to take care of your daughter with the amount of things that she needed. So how did you handle that news being a single mother with two children? And did that affect your relationship with either daughter or both?
Well, when Dana got sick, her older sister had one more semester before graduating as a high school senior. And so um, it was scary because Dana was not getting better, and she barely could sit at Kayla's graduation. I had to take her home, and it was very upsetting for Kayla. And then she went to college, but she came home a lot of weekends. But I think in a way, it was very hard for her because her relationship really diminished with her sister, and she wasn't able to come visit. Um, and then when Kayla would come home, we were always trying some new thing that was going to help. And the attention was on Dana. And because she got so environmentally sensitive, which happens when your nervous system is really challenged, everything bothered her. So I had to put in sound doors so that Kayla and I could talk in the next room or in the kitchen. And because Dana couldn't tolerate noise. And so it was pretty severe. I did my best. I got help and went to various things that Kayla was doing at college. And but I think it was years later after Dana got well enough that had to unwind for Kayla.
Yeah, I'm sure that it was difficult to watch her sister be in this position and not be able to help her. And then for Dana not to be able to do a lot with Kayla, I mean, on both ends, I'm sure that was very difficult. And you're in the middle of both of it.
And Dana was very crabby because everything bothered her and everything hurt. And she said to me a number of times over the years that she couldn't remember when her body felt okay, when it didn't have pain. And, I would hear that, and for a while I would be so traumatized, and then it would sort of go away because I'm not feeling pain. But then I would be reminded, the thought that she just was always constantly in pain was too much.
Mm-hmm. And all you want to do is just be able to help your daughter. And so you talked about searching for a cure. So what has the search been like? And has this whole medical journey with Dana changed your view on the healthcare system?
Well, I like to read LymeDisease.org, and one time I had an article on that. They keep everybody informed on what's happening with the sort of legal end of things, the research that's being done, and so there is no cure. And Dana's very well now, so I don't really think about it because that's what I've decided to do. I've decided that we learned a lot. She ended up being her own healer, and I listened to her after a while because she needed to have ownership of her healing journey, and she was the one that could tell if it helped or didn't help. And it's made her an amazing practitioner that she is now. And I think that she knows enough. The cure is that you become responsible for your system, and if you feel like it's needing something or it's being challenged in some way, you have the things that you do. And so it's sort of a more holistic view. Do we ever kill all of the spirochetes in all of the hidden places that they because they make these biofilms, and they can just kind of be in remission, so to speak. But then if your system's down or the oxygen level goes down in your blood enough, which means something's not going well, they'll just come out and take over, and you'll have more of a live infection. So it's really like being able to be in charge of your own health. And because of some of the symptoms were so mental, because it affects the brain, that was really challenging. And, Dana actually learned to distinguish between what was the effects of this toxic infection in her head and what she was really feeling. And it was fascinating. And of course, this all happened in a time in her life when she's becoming an adult, 16 to 20 something. And so, yeah, I may have veered off the question, but.
No, you're okay. So you kind of talked about Dana's health today. Can you talk more about that, how she's doing, and what's going on with her life now?
Yeah, I did want to read this one thing though, because I just part of this last question was my relationship with my daughters, and it was an intense journey, one that we didn't ask for or nobody would, but because of it, she was a cranky teenager and she didn't feel well, and she was mad at me the whole first year and maybe longer. But finally, I just said to her, we're going to have to be a team, and so this is on the cover of my book. It's a little paragraph that reminds me of what it was really like for us, mother and daughter. Being with Dana was blissful at times. It felt like we were bonding in ways most mothers and daughters never do, a silent rhythm of glory and guts. Our hearts grew warmer in each other's presence, and we shared a vast fear that no one else could grasp. We held onto each other against the world. And so I wanted to bring that up because, anyone who has a chronic condition has close relationships and family. And it will give you some gifts. It will also be very hard. And I am ultimately very grateful for the closeness that we have, because we did become a team. She realized that fighting me was not half of what she was fighting. So that's about the mother-daughter. And so this, what's the search been like? Again, I question the word cure, because in a way that is how the healthcare system, how the pharmaceutical system works. Like, we have this for this and it cures that, and nothing is quite that cut and dried. And I think with chronic Lyme, it's a process of getting infections down, unwinding a lot of things that got disrupted in the system, and kind of working with a variety of things that do help you. And, that can be calming, music that helps you relax. It can be, acupuncture, massage, lymph massage. Dana's lymph system did not work well during this whole time. It was hard for her body to detox and do what it normally did. And it was hard to get enough exercise when she didn't feel well. So I think one of the things that she ended up doing, she really wanted to go to a college that had a dance department. And she ended up at Bennington. And I think that was part of her healing, just being able to move and create and immerse herself in that discipline.
Well, it's great that she finally realized that you were a team, like you said, because having that support person, that person to lean on, luckily you were there for her. So the two of you could guide this together and she could find, like you said, what worked best for her and her health. And I think the dance thing is great. I think that she finally found something that made her feel good and made her happy, and that probably definitely helped her with her medical journey.
Yeah, definitely.
And so, has it been difficult for Dana to live with something that some people may call an invisible disability? I'm sorry. And how has she overcome stigma with that?
That was huge. People with Lyme disease don't look like they're as sick as they are. They don't have a broken something, they don't have cancer. Uh, they look like they should get with it and move
Hmm.
on. And people expect you to. So I think what happened for Dana was it used to make her very mad. She was at a Waldorf school and in high school, and she uh, couldn't take all the classes. So she ended up moving down to the class below her and staying with that group. And they just were amazing with her. And they knew and they were curious about how it was for her. And I remember this one time they came over to watch her have an IV put in because they wanted to see what it was like for her. And so that was really lovely. And one time she was giving a presentation in class, but she couldn't really stand. And so, because she just felt really weak that day. And anyway, she got on her knees and gave the presentation. They said, "You can do it. Just, you know, sit down or whatever you need to do." And she got on her knees and she gave her presentation. And they just cheered her on. But when she got to college, I think she didn't want to feel different and nobody could tell. She had accommodations with the college to have extra time if she needed it, because it was still hard to read, even a lot because of her brain. But anyway, she kind of hid it from everybody, and she couldn't live in the dorm. That was way too overwhelming and too many cleaning products. And so she had her own apartment. So she was a little bit separate. Um, and it used to make her mad. But I think she finally realized that she really wasn't telling everybody what she was doing when she would go home. She was taking her meds, she was doing a variety of things. And so in her junior year, she made friends with this young man who became pretty close to her, and he would pick her up, or she would pick him up. She had the car and go to the farmer's market and whatever. And he decided to do a whole photo project on her and what it was like. And so he got behind the scenes and took some pictures of her injecting herself with some special things that were helpful to the nervous system. And anyway, and I think that was very nice for her because she trusted him, and no one really saw all of it. And so, yeah, I think finally she came around to realizing that all of it, in a way, was her responsibility. She could include people, and if they didn't understand and they expected things of her that she wasn't going to be able to do, to just say so.
Hmm. Yeah, I'm sure that would be very difficult because you're experiencing all this pain and internally and nobody can see it. So I'm sure that was very hard, especially as a teenager. But luckily, she had a good high school class that helped her through that and kind of found the right people in college that she wanted to let in, like you said. So I think that that probably definitely helped her come to terms with this invisible disability.
Bennington is very kind of independent thinkers. And so I think at one point she wanted to start, I can't quite remember, but something like um, that sick bodies required some empowerment as well. And, I think I don't think there was anybody else with Lyme, but there was some, there's students that had various things. And there was an artist at the time this woman was doing these amazing photographs of herself dressed in red. It's very dramatic. And I think it helped Dana because she got to think through, like I get equal concern and empowerment here,
Mm-hmm.
So luckily she passed through that.
That's good. And it helped her, I guess, show that she's not alone. Other people
Yeah.
have something else going on too. Okay. So you touched on Dana's health a little bit earlier. Can you talk about how her health is today and what she's doing in life?
Yes, Dana did graduate from college, and then she stopped taking everything, supplements, and she wasn't really taking any pharmaceuticals anymore. But she started a protocol on homeopathy and worked with a constitutional homeopathist who basically um, uses stronger homeopathy, but really based on your constitution and lets your body heal in the way that it heals. And so that was sort of the end of the healing journey, was to just really recover her own vitality and her own body doing the rest of the work of becoming balanced. And so she she gained a lot of knowledge from working with alternative practices and all the medical stuff that she went through. And she got very interested in, well, she actually, at the last part of college, was trained in Reiki, and she did a lot of that on herself. And then she wanted to use it with clients, and she entered a training in craniosacral training, working with hands-on and the most energetic, sensitive fluid in the body, the craniosacral fluid. And in doing so, she did some work with me, working with infants, and she was led to develop her own work, which kind of encompasses a lot of things in the birth world. She became a doula, and so she does, her work is called Birth Imprint. And she'll work with the things in your system and your psyche from your own birth, and also help you if you're wanting to have a child or you're pregnant with, that whole physiological journey. And so she's pretty amazing.
It sounds like it. Well, it's great that she's doing much better physically and kind of found her path through her medical journey.
Yeah.
And last question, what do you wish more people knew about Lyme disease?
So most people don't know much, and unless they know somebody who had a case. what I really want people to know is it's everywhere across the nation. You can get a tick bite and it may be carrying the Borrelia and other things. So what's really interesting is that if you know you have a tick bite, save the tick. You can go get a blood test, but if you send the tick in to be tested, we know that whatever it has, you might have if you've been bitten. If it doesn't have it, you don't have it from that bite. And so it's easier to test the tick and have a good read on what's going on. So there's some labs back east. There's the lab here on the West Coast is iGenix lab, and you can go on their site and learn everything you need to learn. The other thing is that just be aware of ticks during certain seasons. They're very tiny, like in spring. If you think you have been around ticks and you start feeling funny, don't forget to get yourself checked for Lyme. The people think that it's only back east and that you must have the bullseye rash on your body. That's not true, either of those. So that's my big push. And, LymeDisease.org. And then on my website, I once did a whole blog on all the Lyme books and all the stories and the up-to-date things, if you really are dealing with Lyme, that you might want to read and think about in terms of treatment.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that advice because everybody needs to get checked for Lyme disease. So that concludes our interview for today. Again, Ms. Penenberg, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your family story. The perseverance as well as the strength that you and Dana have is incredible. And I wish the best for you and your family. And please make sure to check out Ms. Penenberg's book, Dancing in the Narrows, A Mother-Daughter Odyssey Through Chronic Illness, which can be purchased on Amazon as a paperback or a Kindle version. And if you're interested in sharing your story with us, please reach out with your name and email address to set up an interview. Email me at powerofpatient@gmail.com. I'm Bri Allison for the Power of the Patient Project, the National Library of Patient Rights and Advocacy. Thank you for watching.
Thank you.